I am going to declare us live, as I'm going to be doing each and every Monday for the awesemo.com PGA First Look Show. Charles Schwab Classic. We talked a little on Friday, Sal Vetri, Geoff Ulrich, and myself, but that was more just like welcome back golf. We're going to really dig into the tournament here. We're going to talk about some of our favorite plays, our favorite outright bets of the week, and of course, the course. So we've got Colonial to break down. Chad, I see you guys here. What's up, everybody? Hit that like button. Does us a big help right off the bat, but let's get right to it, Sal. How are you doing? Saw you Friday. How was your weekend?
Yeah, the weekend was good, man. And now they added a couple more golfers into the field. It's Monday, so the start of the week is here. And yeah, I think officially we could declare that golf is back.
It certainly is. All right, Geoff. So again, we talked a little about Charles Schwab on Friday, but it was more about, the testing and some of the other things with the unforeseen things with COVID. Those are not, it's not like we resolved those and they're going away. But again, we're going to take this pretty traditional today. So I guess we can really hop in. And the first thing that I noticed, because golf is in the spotlight, is there are monster tournaments. There is a Millie Maker on DraftKings. The structure, of course, is top heavy, but there's also some other ones. What did you make when you saw kind of the contest selection that we had?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's nice to see, obviously, as I try and get these open actually, but it's nice to see. I mean, I think I think they're underrating it a little bit. Some of these, I mean, obviously the Millie Makers, 3 million, that's good. And the 500, it's already like a quarter full, over a quarter full. I mean, these things are going to fill early, man. Like I love the 200 single entry they got, but they probably could have doubled the field. I mean, there's no sports right now. So I love the contest they've made. I think they made a good blend of like a top heavy Millie Maker and then some other really good prize structures. I just wish they just committed to it a little bit better and been like, giving us some really big ones, because it's gonna fill, man. Like this no one has done live sports outside of like NASCAR and MMA. Those are great sports. But golf is like a big four sport for DraftKings, and this is gonna be a monster week. So I'm liking these tournaments. Like I said, my only gripe is, probably should have just got bigger right off the bat.
Yeah, I think that the interest is going to be there. What I like though was, and you just hit on this, is the variety, Sal. Of course the Millie Maker's great, but you're talking about a $3 million prize pool and one person. Basically, I always think about it like this: when you run a Millie, there's going to be one really happy person, and then maybe a handful of people who are somewhat happy but kind of pissed that they almost won $1 million. That's about it. We have other, we have a 555, we have a $200 single entry, and then there's a lot of lower dollar tournaments, big pools. I liked what they did on DraftKings, and even on the other sites. I saw FanDuel put out some big stuff. Super Draft, I'm sure, will be up and running. What did you make of it when you saw kind of the lobbies?
Yeah, it's huge. And like you said, it kind of just touches on everything. You have the Millie Makers, just marketing. You're going to get a ton of people in there trying to win $1 million. And then everything else after that, really, once you get past those first few contests up top, I like the fact that like the $3 is just 10% the first. So that's the first thing that I noticed. I think that's like the traditional 20 max that they always have, the birdie. So it's 10% the first still. And then after that, yeah, the $200, the $100. So it's like every single level that you feel comfortable at. And those $200, is it the 3 max, the $100 entry as well, the stinger, those contests are only like 15% the first, 12% the first. So it's set up really nicely for some of the worst tournaments that are just a ton of money to first, but the ones that get marketing and people to the site, and then a lot of other stuff after that. So yeah, that's the first thing that I noticed, just a ton of contests up top. And yeah, I would say if you're new to golf, get into these contests, look at them a little bit, get into the ones that you like the most. And honestly, for cash perspectives in golf, just go for the tournaments, to be honest with you. That's my advice.
No, I like, and one of the things I say this often, certainly behind the paywall, but it needs to be said, is I don't think people realize on DraftKings that there are some restrictions. So if you're getting into golf and you are able to play things like the quarter arcade and some of the lesser dollar things, not everyone can play those. And you're cutting out a ton of sharks and a ton of people that maybe have some more experience playing. That is a great way to learn the sport. That's a great way to boost your bankroll. Not saying it's as easy as just printing, but it's certainly easier than taking on some of the better 150 max players. So keep that in mind when you are building this week. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and I didn't know about this, I saw a tweet yesterday from Pat Mayo on it, got me interested. Geoff, have you seen this promotion that DraftKings is doing? They're doing it in the Millionaire Maker and as well in the 555. They have a separate prize pool, and I'll let you elaborate on this, basically paying out the best golfer for each round. So basically, whoever's leading after round one, if you rostered that guy, you're going to get a share of $50,000. So depending on who it is, do you think it'll be a sizable chunk of change if it's a low-owned guy?
Yeah, I honestly, man, I mean, until you sent out like the sheet for today, I didn't clue into this because like I'm just someone who doesn't read things like that. I mean, I just breeze through, I enter whatever, I just figure everything's the same. But yeah, I mean, this is something to catch on. I mean, they're offering 50 grand for end of round leaders in the Millie Maker. I think it's 25 grand in the 555 per round.
Yep.
I just want to 25 grand per round. So if you have the end of round leader, I mean, you get a share of that. I think in the 555, it's a lot more interesting. I mean, you're only going up against 2,000 players. I mean, you know, I'm not going to start listing off players. There's a ton of people under 6K are going to be like, you know, 3 people are going to have them. So if you really like someone, especially to go off early or something, or you think they're just in a good spot for a first round leader or whatever, I mean, it's going to be a lot more interesting. It's going to be harder to keep them off your team, I guess. I don't know if I changed my strategy altogether, but after reading this, I mean, I definitely might think about putting a couple entries into the Millie Maker or something with guys that I like in that regard, who I just feel like could go low for a round, and I think are going to be like under 1% owned. I'm not sure how big a share you're going to get in the Millie Maker because there's so many entries, but it's still something to think about nonetheless.
Yeah. So Sal, I guess just to pass it to you, my thought is really, I'm not gonna say, oh, now I'm gonna play this. Like if I thought a guy had a chance to be the first round leader, he's probably gonna be on some of my teams. I think in the 555, you know, just to give an example, if you have a guy that's 10% owned there, it's only 200 people. You have a guy who's 10% owned in the Millie Maker, you're talking about 17,000 and change. Obviously going to be a lot different. But does this mean anything to you? I think it's a cool gimmick, but does it really alter anything in terms of your lineup construction?
I think it's fantastic marketing. Like I like it a lot, but yeah, when it comes down to it, in the 555, I do like it because yeah, it encourages you to be contrarian in a smaller field where you might not want to be as contrarian. So depending on your angle there, so I think it might impact like your last guy into your lineup. You kind of want to just throw a dart a little bit, open up some more upside. For all 4 days, the guy just has to be the round leader at that point. And for me, in the big thing in the Millie Maker, yeah, nothing really. Like I think it's, if you have a guy who's 1% owned, this math could be totally wrong, but you would win $28 if that person is the first round leader.
Like 1,700 people.
Yeah, it's like 1,700 people. So that's like if you're just hitting the nuts with a guy only 1% on, you're never going to be the only person on a player. So I think that prize is automatically being split. But yeah, I think it doesn't change much, but I think it's really good marketing, and it's just something else that's fun. If you have an extra $25 in your account after a day and you got another ticket in there, pretty much at that point, that's not bad.
Yeah, it really, again, it leverages ownership just a little more. We were already doing that, and that's something that we're always going to be doing when we do this. But of course, you know, as we talked about on Friday, we've got some new faces in chat and maybe some people that haven't played a ton of golf. So one of the things we're going to get into, we don't have recent form, but we do have course fit. We do have course history. So let's dive in there. Geoff, we're at Colonial. This is a track that we've seen a ton. And tomorrow, me and Tim Frank will go in depth even more with this, but we can talk about the course here. What do you make of it? Or is there any skill that kind of pops off the bat to you in terms of what type of golfer may excel?
So I think Colonial is pretty much one of these old classic tracks that I don't want to call it quite a putting contest, but you look at past tournaments and, you know, incarnations of this event. It's really just off the tee play just doesn't matter that much. I mean, when you have a guy like Jordan Spieth and even a Kevin Na in your winner's circle, I mean, off the tee play just isn't going to be that big a factor. It doesn't mean you can't be you can be just terrible all the time, but it really, if you look at the stats, you know, the winners, they come through with their approaches. They just have a complete hot fire with their putter. 4 of the last 5 winners have gained 7 or more strokes with their putter, which is big numbers even for a winner. So it is a course that plays, you know, a lot of longer par 4s, but 7 of them go between 400 and 450 yards. So that's an efficiency range that, you know, you want to keep an eye on. You know, there's a few dog legs, but really it's kind of just a little straightforward course with narrow fairways, trees that overhang. Again, if you've played here lots, that can be a big factor. Just knowing where to put the ball in the fairway, knowing when to lay back without a driver, things like that. Guys get in their comfort zone because there's a lot of similar approaches here. It's not an overly difficult course, but it's one where, again, I don't think you need to be overly powerful to win it. Doesn't mean that guys who have a great week with the driver won't have an advantage, but it's just one of those courses where power is de-emphasized, and guys who putt well generally do the best. So it's a bit of a putting contest week, but at the same time, you got to be consistent through the bag, because if you get too far off course, you'll just block yourself out on too many holes.
Yeah, par 70 here, as you mentioned, you're not going to really see it. John Rahm, can you overpower it? Of course, he can overpower anything, but typically you're going to see guys club down here. Sal, is there anything, when I know we're coming off the layoff, how do you really approach it? Do you just kind of envision some skill sets? Do you look at the course in terms of, the grass type? We have bent grass here. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, a little bit looking at the grass, but really not much of that is factored in for me, unless it's like really extreme for some guys. So mainly the way that I'm doing it, I mentioned on Friday, is everything's kind of staying the same for me. I might tweak and weight long-term a little bit more than I usually do, like 5% more. So I'm just going to kind of keep it all the same, since everybody's on the same playing field for this, or at least we don't really know how to judge how every single person has been playing and what they've been doing over this off season, or really the 3-month layoff. So that's the way that I'm kind of approaching it, the exact same way. And I would say, yeah, the way that I'm looking at just like key stats here, it's kind of all over the place, but ball striking and approach, kind of like what Geoff was saying, were the two that stood out the most to me. So really just getting it in the fairways is big because of the tree-lined fairways. And then after that, just your second shot. So looking at second shot guys, approach between like 150, 175 is some of the stuff that I'm weighting a little bit higher, like 1 or 2 notches higher this week, because like I think it's the last 5 years, those have been the ones that stand out the most.
And that makes sense. I mean, just looking at, and I don't want to take a 1-year sample size, but just looking at 2019, and Geoff mentioned this, Kevin Na won. He gained 7 strokes putting. Really crisp with the irons around the green, was kind of lacking, but you're going to see, of course, obviously guys who putt well up there. That's natural. But the thing that stands out is killing it off the tee. I don't think there's an inherent advantage there. Like, yes, maybe you have some shorter irons, but this is a second shot golf course, which means, basically it's more important what you're doing with those approaches. You're not going to be able to separate off the tee. So are you willing, Geoff, to kind of overlook some guys that maybe struggle, with the driver and whatnot, and look to those, more technical, Russell Knox comes to mind, guys like that?
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I am. I'm just not emphasizing it as much. And again, this is a week where I'm actually going to look and emphasize bent grass putting splits quite a bit. So maybe Sal and I differ a little bit in that regard, because, again, you look at the people who've had success. It's not just that they've had success putting at Colonial, but it's on bent grass overall. So I'm really just trying to look for a blend of players who are solid with their irons. They're not complete disasters off the tee, obviously, but also they pop for big weeks. Obviously, we're not going to get every player that, you're not going to ever hit every player that you're targeting who's a good putter, but at the very least, I want players who I think are capable of popping for a good week with the putter here, because especially with, the higher owned players, I feel like that is a pretty big ingredient here. It's not something I look at too often or emphasize that often, but this week, definitely, it's going to be like a tiebreaker. It's going to be, if does someone have really bad bent grass putting splits, he's probably going to not make the list over someone who does. So we'll see how that works out. Obviously putting is extremely volatile, but we are working off pretty big samples for most of the players. So again, that is a little bit how I'm looking at it. This course is it's just simple for these players, and they can all club down off the tee. And I think most of them, even the shorter hitters are going to be able to find the fairways when they're doing that. So yeah, that's how I'm approaching it this week.
Yeah, I think it's a good course for people to kind of get back in the flow with. Most of these guys have seen it. So again, me and Tim Frank tomorrow, we'll dive deeper and answer some questions on it, but that's the gist of it. I think that what you want to take from the short hitters, certainly not an inherent disadvantage where they are at some courses. But I do want to say, I said this on Friday and not Nightbot dropped it in chat. We've got some deals going on. We've got 20% off the PGA annual with the promo code Schwab. And we have 10% off a platinum yearly, which means all sports. So if you like NBA, NFL, and you're looking to get in and save some money, promo code SUMMER. You can click that link and join. We'd love to have you as part of the team. Ton of things behind that paywall. And one other quick note, man behind, not behind the glass, that's Josh Engelman, but another man behind, we got Nolan Kelly doing a lot of work. He put up the PGA content schedule, and that's available. But he also wanted to let us know that our stuff is available on podcasts. And if you go and you leave a 5-star rating and review, you can be entered to win some prizes. We're going to have some giveaways on that front. So, go and do that. We really encourage it. Helps us out a ton. A lot of things in the PGA streets right now, but we'll move on. This is where I wanted to talk. I know we've got DFS, and we're going to get to plenty of guys. Don't worry. We got a rapid fire section coming up. But the betting markets right now are locked and loaded, Sal. There's a ton of guys up for grabs. With a field this strong, you're going to get great prices. So I'll open the floor to you, and then we can start drilling in. Did you make any bets yet? Are you looking to bet this event? What do you make of it? Obviously, Rory leads us off in terms of the outright market. You're muted.
I think I was muted. Yeah, so outright markets right now is where I've made bets so far. I made 4 bets so far, and normally I make like 4 bets on the entire week. Sometimes maybe I'll do like a first round leader or something here or there. So we're already locked and loaded. I think I placed those at like 6 or 7 a.m. this morning, trying to see. There's probably been a rush. The numbers have been out a couple of days, but before the big rush comes in, like today and definitely tomorrow. So yeah, right now Roy's the favorite. He should be the favorite at this point. All those guys up there, I'm not touching any of them. It's just such a loaded field, which I'm sure we'll touch on throughout the show more. That everything you're going to get after that, especially because Rory's in this, so he automatically makes everybody else's numbers better. And then just with so many other great golfers, you're getting nice numbers. So I've bet so far outright Xander, Morikawa, Woodland, and Connors 150-1 is the bomb right now that I have out there. So we'll see how that one works out. But yeah, right now, outright market, I was just pretty excited to get to it really quickly and see what was out there. And a lot of the numbers, you can make cases for pretty much every single number in like the double digits that it's a pretty good number.
A lot of value out there. Yeah. I guess I'll ask you a macro question, Geoff. Do you like fields that are stacked like this, where you can get numbers on players that are almost major level numbers, or do you like it where you've got Dustin Johnson at 4-1, and then you're back in like maybe someone who hasn't ever won on tour at like 30-1, whereas here you can get DJ at prices like that. Which do you prefer?
I think I prefer this for the most part. I think this is a really interesting, I think it's a good field for betting, quite frankly, for numerous reasons. Again, it does feel like a WGC field, but it's not really like a WGC event because so many of these top players are in such varying degrees of form. So it just opens the door for so many players at like 40-1 and above, in my opinion, to make a run. It kind of reminds me a little bit too of how Memorial plays. Memorial is one of the better betting events, in my opinion, because a lot of the top players show up, but it's a tricky course. Guys just don't seem overly prepared for it. And I kind of feel like Kelowna is going to play the same. I think a lot of these top players are just not prepared for, just a tricky little track because they haven't played in a bit and it doesn't suit their game. A guy like Dustin Johnson never plays these tracks. So I think it opens the door for a ton of players. I mean, right now for me, I went a little bit heavier up top. I do like Bryson. We'll talk about him later.
Oh yeah.
I hit him at 25-1. I think his course history is keeping his price above 20. I actually hit Ricky because of the bent grass odds we were talking about earlier. I'm in on that. And then I went further back. I think Harris English, Joel Damon, Abraham Answer, all guys I'm looking at. So if you want a little bit more betting info from me, you can head to my Twitter feed for sure. But, I think it's also a time when taking shots with guys like 150-1. I know when the odds first came out, I hit up Danny Lee, Jimmy Walker, and I can't even remember who. Someone else in that range. Well, we'll get to them, but yeah, there's a couple. Exactly. I think those guys are live this week. I think they're live. I think it's a good week to do like each ways and top fives on 101 plus. So
when you do that, and Sal, we can use Corey Connors because I believe you mentioned him. Do you sprinkle on like a top 5 or a top 10, or are you like, say Corey Connors plays fantastic and he comes in second? You're not. I don't believe you're in Canada. You don't have each ways. You get nothing if he comes in second. Do you look to maybe put some money on a top 5 and top 10 just to know that you have a little more wiggle room?
Yeah, I usually will. And right now I don't have any of those. I'll probably go back through after. Some of them weren't even posted this morning for some of the deeper odds, but I'll probably go back through. And Connors is the only one that I've taken long odds on. I'll probably go back through and usually take like a top 10 on him.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, and obviously having the each way, if you have the each way, I would really make use of that. I mean, there's some books that offer like 8, up to 8 places now, but if I didn't have access to that, I would probably pick, say I like 4 long shot guys, I would pick the 2 favorites I like most, bet them outright, and then I would probably hit them in the top 10 odds too, because you're getting good top 10 odds on guys 101 plus anyways. So why not hit it? I think that's a good way to go about it if you didn't have the each ways, because each ways do give you like really good top 5 odds, like better than you get in the regular markets. But I think that if you still like a player at those odds, getting the top 10 odds is a great way to kind of mitigate not having access to each way. So yeah, I like that approach too.
Yeah. And chat, feel free to drop in if anyone, we're always looking on the show for hot tips. So if anyone's got the answer, you could just tell me who's going to win so I can bet them, please.
Also, I'll ask for probably a lot of people just in the chat in general. Do you want to explain what each ways are? I mean, a lot of people might not be eligible for them, but for the people that are.
Yeah, Geoff, go ahead if you want to briefly talk about that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't even hear it.
Can you just talk about? Sal, that's a great point. Because a lot of people are probably unfamiliar with what an each way is.
Oh, yeah.
Just talk about what that
is. An each way is basically two bets. So, if you were betting an outright player just straight up, you'd put $20 on. He says 40 to 1. Your outcome is like $800. But if you do an each way, you'd be doing two bets of $20. So it'd be a $40 bet. 20 would be on the outright. 20 would be on a top five. Most of the books offer top fives at 1/4 of the outright. So if a player was, like I said, 40 to 1, his top five would be 10 to 1. And generally that 10 to 1 is going to be better than you'd get in the regular top five market. So the regular top five market might be 8 to 1. Generally the each way is going to be like a couple points better at 10 to 1. So it's really two bets at once. You're making an outright and a top five bet. So once you click on that each way thing, you're going to see your total bet that you're making double. So like I said, if it's a $10 bet outright, you click on the each way, it becomes a $20 bet, 10 on the top five, 10 on the outright. But the main attraction, and again, you need to be vigilant of this, the main attraction is that the top five odds you're getting on each way bets are almost always better than they are in the regular top five market. So that's why they're profitable. That's why I always tell people to take them if they can.
Yeah, that's something definitely to explore one day, maybe in the state.
Yeah,
but
it'll happen for you guys. I mean, it's coming.
I don't want to say missing something because this is a brutal field, but I have a former champion, a guy that has won against top level. He's won a WGC match play. His name would be Kevin Kisner. He is 90-1. He won this event in 2017. He's a fantastic putter. He is a fantastic bent grass putter. He has the perfect skill set for this course. That's why he won it in 2017. Now, he was not playing well. No doubt about it. Last time we saw him at API, he missed the cut. The irons have been bad. But I really don't mind the spot for someone like Kevin Kisner in the outright market. He is the type of player that can kind of get involved. I mean, I know you mentioned Connors already, Sal, but like when you're looking at a field like this, do you really want to see someone who's won before? Do you think it's possible to kind of, it's hard to break your maiden at a PGA event when it's a major level field. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And that's usually what I'll go through and look for, like just some sort of win upside, being in contention at least, and just obviously having a victory is even better. So guys like Connors last year getting it at the Valero. And yeah, that's things that I look for if I'm going to go for the odds. The reason that I took Connors mainly was looking for just some sort of stat profile, kind of like how the player graded out, how I felt about them, and looking for the best odds on that type of a player. So Connors is going to profile out like guys like Grillo, and he's going to profile out guys like Benny Ann. And the odds, at least when I looked at them, Grillo was pretty close, but Benny Ann's were like half the size. So it was like 70-1 for Benny Ann, 80-1, somewhere around there. So I ended up just going with Connors, somebody who's strong ball striker, strong on approach. And then you just have to hope that when they take the putter out that week, that you're just not having a heart attack and maybe you get some sort of celebration.
Yeah. And you're just to speak to what Geoff was saying, like 33-1, I see Connors for top 5, 12-1 for a top 10. That's very attainable. And you're still getting a monster payout there. Whereas winning it, yeah, that would be nice, but it's hard to win on tour. So I hear, but anything else? I mean, I'm not going to throw, but they have, depending on where you can place your bets. And if you want to know where your state's at, you can go to awesemo.com. We have state-by-state breakdowns. Do you ever look, Geoff, into things like make the cut, other props, things of that nature? Or do you stick mostly to actual just outright bets?
I like the top 20 and top 10 odds, so I'll definitely look at that. Generally later in the week, I always do the outright and the each ways first, just because those markets tend to move when people get their articles up and stuff like that. So I always get to them early. But top 10, top 20, you can often find. I like to look really hard at the bottom of the field for top 20, because oftentimes you'll find players who, for whatever reason, just kind of being disrespected there. I mean, maybe they're only 125 on the odds outright, but they might be like 15-1 in top 20. So you can find a lot of discrepancies. Players who are generally consistent, do pop up. And the top 20 market is really good for players who aren't maybe consistent, but they do have a good record of just when they do make the cut and play well, they almost always top 20. So I like looking at a player's sort of pop rate, like how often do they top 20 per year? Is this been a good field? And if they're playing poorly, you're probably going to get better than odds than you should get on them for that week. So that's something I really look at every week as a top 20. And first round leader for sure. I always look at that. Give that a look. Generally on Wednesday with the weather splits and tee times. That's something you just have to do if you're doing first round leader, in my opinion. Obviously, it's still a value thing. You don't want, you're looking for the best value, but you want to take, like, is there going to be a slight advantage to AM? Is it going to be windy in the AM maybe this week? So you got to look at that. And then props, make the cut. Sometimes for majors, I'll do like a little parlay. But I like looking at 3 balls more than make the cut, just for round by round. I don't do a ton of them because, I just find round by round is so much more variable.
Yeah.
But, you can definitely find some value to there too. One thing I do like looking, I don't want to go too long, but I like looking at 3 balls is one of their playing partners just dead? Like, is he like an old guy? Is he playing so bad that he's just not? And then sometimes, and that might work this week. Sometimes you might just get, better odds than you think on a couple players in that group. So that's kind of one of my strategies for 3 balls.
I'll say real quick, and then Sal, I want to get your thoughts, but check to see, if you are doing top 20s, and this is rare, but if your book pays out ties in full, that is something to take advantage of. So a lot of times, rarely do we have 20 guys in the top 20. It's incredibly valuable if your book says, okay, if there's 26 guys, you're still going to get your full price for your top 20s. That's something that if a book is offering that, you may want to look at the top 20 market because it's a huge, huge advantage. But Sal, what about you? Any matchups that you get into? You don't even have to name specifically, feel free to, but do you bet them or you mostly stick to more future type bets?
Yeah, I'll look at matchups sometimes, usually at majors. But the thing with matchups is right when the odds drop, they're going to be just extremely soft like anything else. So if you are dug into it, you have been able to see whether it's Fantasy National, you have some sort of database where you can see what happened in the first round, the second round, and just see if somebody blew up and had an uncharacteristic day with the putter, whatever it might have been off the tee. That's a way to take advantage of just the one-on-one matchups, this golfer against this golfer for the next day, and just try and bet against the variance of him just blowing up again. If he's right now maybe just plus money, it could be a good bet. That rarely happens, but usually when it does happen, it's right away when the odds are posted within like the first 2 or 3 hours.
Absolutely. And I will have an article out on the betting side tomorrow morning. I have my primer, which is pinned to the top of my Twitter, where I break down my historical results for PGA and talk about some of the things you want to know on the DFS side. But it's true, when these markets open up, and even in the futures, Geoff, you were talking about that, these prices are going to change wildly. Like if you can get a guy right off the bat that you like, once these shows start happening and people start touting them and stuff, your number is going to shrink. So if you can beat that closing line, you can take advantage long term.
Yeah, no. If it's something you're going to get into week to week and making a bit of investment, I definitely recommend just being a little bit fast with the fingers, because if you really like a guy and someone starts talking him up too much, like his price will drop. There's a couple. It's actually mainly the overseas guys, to be honest, who affect the outright betting for me and on the overseas books. But you want to be a little bit fast. At the same time, you want to get as much information as possible. So don't rush yourself too much. It's okay to take a bad number on a guy or a worse number than what he started at if you're getting all the information and you still like him. I mean, I've done that before. I've just bit the bullet, and I'm lucky I did in a couple situations. I remember taking Russell Henley at the Shell. I think he started at like 40. I took him at 40, and then I bet him again at like 28 or something at the end of the week, and he won. So things like that do happen too. But definitely get information, but also don't be a slowpoke.
Yeah, because you can. One of the things, and we have a lot of betting concepts on at the site, is you don't have to bet. So like if you wait, you may save yourself a bet here and there, and that adds up to taking worse numbers. If a guy sees something you don't like, if you've already locked it in, well, it's too late. If you wait, you can incorporate that information.
Always in play betting too. I mean,
always.
You don't always have, if you're just like, I don't like these odds pre-event, man, just wait. And there's tons of in play betting opportunities. So
there's really rare chances too. Like I remember it happened with Jason Day a couple of years back, but like you'll just know a guy's injured. Like there's a guy injured and he'll play another 2 holes out. And like, that's where your advantage is huge. And he might be a huge underdog, but it's just free money if they're going to put the odds up.
Yeah. Jason Day. And he's He is someone that is going to be a hot topic this week, but we're going to dive into it. Like I said, I'm going to do a full breakdown, me and Fantasy Golf Man tomorrow, where we get to guys I didn't even know existed. But here we still wanted to get to some DFS picks. We wanted to get these guys' thoughts. So we're going to do some rapid fire. And basically what we're going to do, we're going to go to each price range. We'll break it down very lightly, give our favorite plays. Feel free to throw in some fades and whatnot. And I guess we'll start right at the top. So I'm going to just group, I'll call them the big four. We've got Rory, we've got Rahm, we've got JT, and we've got Bryce and Sal. If you had to pick one, do you have a favorite? How do you go about that?
Yeah, so if I'm looking at one just that I feel, I'll factor in everything. Price, not ownership right now, but pretty much just price. I'll go to just Bryson at the bottom of it. I'm really not looking to spend up, at least right now this week. So just the cheapest guy at that point.
Fair enough. Geoff, what do you do? For me, I have a feeling you might be in Lou, because you said you bet Bryson. 10,100 for Bryson, I feel very comfortable with. It opens up the rest of your salary. And to me, there's not that big of drop-off between him and these three other guys who are obviously world-class players.
Yeah, I do like Justin Thomas for this setup, and I think he could be a little bit under-owned. You know, he's fired with his approaches. I think he's played well at the Deere before. He's definitely a player who I think can handle a course like this. But I would still take Bryson. I think he just gets hotter with his putter. He's just a better putter. He pops with big putting weeks. He's done it at the Shriners, which actually I think is also a bent grass venue. So yeah, I'm in on Bryson. You know, his approaches aren't up to JT standards, but I think he bests him in other ways. And again, this is Bryson's done well at RBC, places like that. So I know his course history here isn't great, but I think that's just going to keep his ownership down. So it just makes me like him more. Yeah,
and he went to college in Texas, so right. He should be used to bet. There's no reason why he couldn't handle this. As I was saying, though, truly, when I'm up here, if you told me any of these guys was 35% owned and one of the others was 10%, I'm going overweight on the 10% guy. To me, they're close enough where you can play that game. As we work down, that's not always going to be the case. So let's do just that. Sal, I'll go right back to you. So now we got more options. I'm going to open it up. Feel free to throw a couple guys on both sides, but who is your guy in the 9K range? We start with Webb. We go all the way down to Justin Rose here.
This is tough because I think there's going to be a couple. I think this is the best range. And I think there's going to be a couple of guys that I have very similar amounts of ownership to and maybe just start most of my lineups here. So it's tough for me to choose one right now, but I'm looking at Xander, Sungjae, and Morikawa right now. I'm assuming even with a price tick up in Morikawa, I think this is like maybe the most expensive we've seen him this year, but he's up there above 9K. Maybe that drops him down a little bit, but he's usually like around 20% owned. So I'm probably going to go Xander and Sungjae in this range. But on like every single name in this range outside of Ricky and really DJ maybe are interests of mine.
Those are probably the two I like the most. So that'll be good. We have all the bases covered on this show. Geoff, what do you make of it? We had a couple people in chat. Sean in particular really likes Justin Rose. He wasn't playing well beforehand. Where do you go? I think you can get leverage in this range depending on where you actually want to play.
Yeah, I am. Don't worry, Ben. I'm on Team Ricky.
I'm wearing orange. Come on
again,
now.
I mean, he's. You look at the strokes gained putting on bent grass over the last 50 rounds. He's got he's fifth most strokes gained. 2 years ago, he played here over 6 strokes gained with putting. I know it's putting. It's variable. When are guys going to show up with the putter? But certain guys just do it way more often than others. So and again, it's not just that. It's Ricky is going to be the lowest owned in this range. I'm almost positive of it. Maybe Rose. I don't know, but he's going to be one of the top 2 lowest owned in this range. I'm completely fine taking that. I think this is a course where Ricky can come out, and I think he's a player who has had some layoffs and then come out and played really well. I'm not really in on Dustin. Sungjae is obviously Sungjae. He's just so consistent. Reed has been really consistent too. So it's not like I don't like the other players in this range. I mean, I love me some Xander as well, but I think this is a course where Ricky can pop. And again, if he comes out and gains 7 strokes with the putter, man, I mean, he's still a player who wins like every season. I know he gets discounted a lot and people like to talk trash about it, but I don't mind taking him at this lower ownership, especially in these circumstances. I think it's a good place for him to come out. He was actually getting the ball striking together a little bit. So I do kind of like Ricky for the big fields a lot here. Again, not that I don't like other players. Everyone's going to talk about Morikawa this week. You guys don't need me to talk about it. He's a solid play. I no problem if you're making like a cash game lineup going with that. I think he's still very affordable. Same with Sungjae. I think the other play I might go to for GPPs is Xander, because I think people are kind of a little bit fed up with him just from not performing before the break, and again, doesn't have the course history here. So kind of falls in that same category as Ricky, but Ricky far more likely to pop with the putter.
Mm-hmm. Real quick before we move to the 8K range, Sal, just do you have any take on Brooks at 9,700? He's was not playing well before. What do you? Floor is yours. Do you have any take? Because I certainly don't right now.
Yeah, I mean, months ago when he was injured, I was like lukewarm on the situation in the betting markets. I think he might have had it might have pushed 30. I think it was like around like 28 to 1 odds. And yeah, everybody was off him. He was playing bad. He was injured. But now you have months off. And yeah, it's Brooks Koepka. He's done this before, just coming out of just cold and somewhat maybe rusty and winning at majors. So yeah, I actually don't hate it. I just don't know if I'll be able to get there. Like I want to be able to get there, but you see everybody else in this 9K range. Xander, I'm high on. He's right below him. DJ's sort of in a similar situation as Brooks, and maybe I'd rather go there for a little bit of a savings. So out of everybody in that range, I'm probably not going to get as much there, but I don't think the field will either. Like I would assume in this loaded of a range, he might still be in the single digits in ownership.
I think that's very possible. I mean, you can't play all these guys, and I know people will start lineups in the 9K. I'm very comfortable doing that, but obviously the big four are going to garner a ton of interest, and that's going to create some vacuums. But as we work down now, here we go, Leishman season. We got Mark Leishman 8,900 all the way down to Spieth and Sergio. Sal, these are going to be. They fit almost every type of build. I always say that. If you go balance, you have a couple of them. If you go super aggressive, they could be your third man in. They could even be your second man in some like Rory lineups. What do you make of the 8K range at first glance there?
Yeah, I like the 8K range, and Woodland's the one who stands out the most to me. I did place the 50 to 1 bet on him, and even in DraftKings, he always does seem to garner ownership, though. Maybe the fact that Morikawa, Sanjay, a little more expensive. Finau, another guy who usually picks up some ownership around him, will drag it down a little bit, but he's the guy that I do like the most. We'll see how much ownership implicates that a little bit. And then I want to play some Scotty Scheffler, but he's priced up to 8,400 right now, and he's in a loaded field. So the question is, like, you don't need him to win the event, but at that price tag, you need him to at least compete and obviously make the cut. So I like Scotty Scheffler. I mean, he's in Texas for that narrative side of it. He's a guy who just scores. He picks up birdies. So he's a guy that usually makes a good chunk of my lineups, but it'll see what the ownership is on him. I assume it's going to be low. So he'll be a guy that like 5-10% of my lineups will probably be in.
There's a couple guys like that, Geoff. Shane Lowry to me is going to be, if you're talking about a milli maker, I would say the lowest owned guy of this. Now, I'm not sure where I fall on him skill-wise here, but the 8K, and then you have Jason Day.
Yeah.
Do you think people are going to overthink him and Louis specifically because withdrawals are on our mind about COVID? Or is that a legitimate concern that maybe those guys are more likely to have not get COVID, but just in general not like this setup or whatnot?
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I almost feel like, will those guys like it more because there's no fans too? I mean, there's that possibility. I don't know. I could see Jason Day being like an anti-fan guy. He comes out after the round being like, hey, this is great or something, So it would be a total Jason Day thing to say.
It would.
I think I would probably, from a pure GPP perspective first, I would probably go Day over Lowry. Day's got really good bentgrass putting splits as well. Not like I love the play or anything like that, or I'm betting Jason Day. But again, it's just so many good putters have won this event. It's a long layoff. Jason Day, assume is at least well rested for one event. I think I'm going to assume that at least for this week that he's okay. So I do like that. I kind of like the situation for him coming in completely under the radar. But this range is tough for me. I mean, my first glance is just to like Leishman. But he's the most expensive player. And you look at some of the players underneath him, like Kuchar, Finau, Scheffler, like Sal said, he's just such a good scorer. I don't know, man. I mean, I think Kuchar is easily the safest, but I'm not sure we should be caring too much about safety here. I think you kind of take a risk in this range and you go with like a Finau or a Scheffler and you just go for the big week or even a Day. Like I said, that's kind of why I like Jason Day. You just go for the big week and hope your guy pops because there's so much upside in this range that I feel like going safe, it might not get you there in the end.
Listen, with Jason Day, Chad just asked about his back. I have no idea.
I have no idea either.
It seems like a, not pun intended, but day-to-day thing with him. It flares up. You would hope he would be healthy after a couple month layoff. But so we have to talk real quick, Sal, about Jordan Spieth. It's looking like course history and just the name is going to boost his ownership. Now, what we have, I think, the best projections out there with ownership with Alex at the keys. Stay tuned to that. I don't know what it'll be, but it looks like it's not going to be low. What do you make of Jordan Spieth? Is it going to be an ownership thing for you? Do you have no interest regardless? Or do you think he can conjure up some of his magic from old Colonial here?
Yeah, for me, I don't think it was going to be a thing at all, regardless of the ownership this week. I mean, maybe if he's just not touched at all. But right now, yeah, if he's like trending towards being a top 10 owned guy, maybe even like a top 5 owned guy at this point, I just can't take the narrative of like he had 3 months to prepare and really get his game down. And now he's just like a top 5 golfer at that price point. I get it. It's the price point. It's the name, obviously, with a lot more casual money with the Millie Maker. He's just probably like one of 5 names that people recognize, and he's so cheap. So you click the name. But for me, he's probably not somebody that I'm going to end up getting to. We don't know what the game has done the last 3 months, but before, everything was just broken outside of the short game, which does matter here, but it matters at a lot of different places. The approach, the ball striking, off the tee, all that stuff was still an issue, and I can't just forget about all that. I'd rather be late at this point than early, and I feel like I'm just going to be that way with Spieth until he does think something, and I hope that he does.
Oh, I'm with you, Geoff. Is it unanimous, or are you going to go on the Spieth bandwagon?
I'm all the way out. I mean, I think it's ludicrous to think that a dude who was being so bad in competition, now that he hasn't had 3 months with any competition, is just going to figure it out the next time he plays. Like, to me, Jordan Spieth has to do it before he can just come out and perform. I think that you're much more likely to see a guy who was already performing well come out and smoke the field than a guy who wasn't.
Yeah, and like if you told me that he fixed, like if you told me he fixed everything and he was the same golfer from 3 years ago, we still don't see him. Like he can't practice the tournament mentality on like a Sunday. Like we've seen him in contention leading after Friday, and I think a huge part of it at this point is stuff that I'll have to work through when he's there, like Sunday with a lead. Like I don't want to bet on his mental state at that point. Obviously, you feel great if you know that's going to be the case, but I don't even feel good about that if that was the case. So I'm just all the way off.
Ownership, like, yeah, if he's 3% owned, obviously I'd sprinkle. He's not going to be, so it's not worth talking about. As we work down, now we get into the true mid-range. Snedeker has the dreaded red O. I don't believe he's here. We got Hovland leading us off, Berger, Kevin Na, the defending champ, all the way down to, I'm not going to say bad golfers, but golfers that are certainly a little more erratic. We've got Harry Higgs, Noren, Poston, Munoz, Sal. It's still a good range. It's not like these guys can't play, but it's a big range. There's dozens of names in here. How do you separate it?
Yeah, it's tough. I think you separate it a little bit through ownership, but just going off of just trying to build a profile or somebody who's a little bit of a course fit here. I guess you can take into account the guys like Kisner, like you were talking about earlier. Those are guys in like the outright market. I think at that price point, it's fine to have at DraftKings as well. Like none of these guys are terrible options in my opinion, outside of if they start to pick up a ton of ownership. So I think that 74 and 7,500, I mean, there's like 10 golfers in there. I think that's a very key range because a lot of guys profile out as very similar players. Benny Ann's in there, who I'm sure will pick up a lot of ownership, a lot of the younger golfers. So I'm fine getting to Ann. It just depends on what the ownership is. And we touched on this on Friday. If it's going to be his normal, like 20%, 15, 20% ownership, then I'll probably just full fade it because just in his price range alone, there's like 8 other golfers. So at his exact price. So I think that he does stand out. Kisner, they have the experience. They profile here as well. And then Max Homa is somebody that I've just been personally riding since he went on this heater. He doesn't set up nicely here if you look at long-term stats, but you can throw out a lot of that for Homa if you really want to just look at when he started to get hot. And it's pretty much this season. It's just top 25s nonstop and really top 15s the entire year. And everything's been improving, the approach play, the ball striking. So it's really how you want to weight that. And I think that's something also to think about is like individual players. Like you want to look at Bryson for what he's been doing recently because there's been clear switches there. Another guy like that is going to be Homa. So at 7,500, at least at that price range, he's somebody who stood out.
So, Geoff, Sal just rattled off, and I'm with him on most of those. Probably at home is someone I got to dig into more. But he didn't mention your boy Harris English, who is at $7,500. Talk to me about the former Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually just trying to see what his ownership might be. I mean, it's probably going to be up there. He's not going to be like super. It's not going to be like 5% owned or something. So that's something you have to consider. But and the dude has gained 8 strokes here putting in twice since 2016. So, I mean, he can get it done at this course, and he's had really good approach weeks here too. Everything was trending before the break for him, pretty much, and just well. And I mean, I'll throw in another tidbit. They had like a little Sea Island event last week. He finished second in it. Like he shot like 66, 65. So, with guys like Brian Harmon and people like that in it, like good players. So, Yeah, everything looks good for Harris. I got no reason to fade him. Even if he's a little bit highly owned, I'll have a piece. I already bet him at 80-1. So again, I'm not going to go super overweight because of that, but I feel confident. I actually do. I mean, I do feel confident he's at least going to produce for us at 7,500. And I'll say the same thing about Joel Damon, who, again, we saw him play a tiny bit over the break. Obviously shot a 58 in practice. That was on his Twitter feed, but was trending well in approaches. Doesn't have quite the same putting upside, but he has flashed. And Damon's a player who I feel like is just trending towards a win eventually. I'm not saying it's going to happen here, but I do like this course for a guy who hits it pretty straight. I'm of the opinion right now that I'm probably going to be fading most of the high 7K range, either for ownership or I just like the players cheaper than them just as much. Like, obviously I like Damon and English pretty much as much as the guys just above them, like Nan and even Berger, who the one thing about Berger and Homa, I'd say, is they don't have great putting splits, and I'm okay fading them for that reason here. Again, I'm not saying it's the right reason, but you need something to hang your hat on, and I'll probably do that with both of them. Although I feel like Berger could burn me, but he's been a really bad bentgrass putter. So anyways, I'm much more invested in the low 7K range this week. I feel like there's so many names who have the same kind of potential as the high 7K range, and a couple of them you get a really low ownership. So
yeah, the problem here, and again, you can't play. There's 20 guys, maybe more in the 7K range. Like you just can't get reasonable exposures if you open it up. You're gonna have to make some hard decisions. Berger's the par 70 god though, so don't sleep on. But he is, St. Jude's is certainly not bent grass, where he had a ton of success. That's a wait and see for me, but we'll close it out and chat. Like I said, just to give you a quick peek, 2:30 tomorrow, me and Tim Frank will be doing, pricing by pricing, going over every player. Then Wednesday, me and Jason Roslin live before lock. You know the drill there, answering your questions. Articles will be posted, everything in between. You see our Twitter handles on the screen. Follow us there. Hit us up with questions. But we need some cheapies from you, Sal. We got the 6K range. Streelman leads us off, who's still a damn good player. Somebody named, who is this guy? F. Corpering closes us out. I don't think that's the answer. Where do you go? How low do you go, do you think? I mean, are you going to get a 6K flat guy in there, or do you think that's unnecessary?
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'll end up getting that low. I saw Denny McCarthy was just added. He's like 6,400, but Andrew Landry at like 6,400 is like maybe the last name that I'd actually consider clicking. But yeah, anything really below, like Lanto at 6,900, I like a lot. I think Lanto is going to be, like, if people talk about cores, like Lanto might be a core piece in a lot of my lineups. He's just consistent. He makes cuts, and I think he's made like the last 4 or 5 cuts, and he has top 25 upside. He has the win upside that we saw within the past year and a half. So I like Lanto, another birdie or better type of a player at 6,900. It's a good value. Victor Perez is always a guy that I don't really know what to make of because we don't really have stats on him, but he's always ranked highly in the world and talked highly of by his peers. And then he comes into fields like this and he usually doesn't show out. So Lanto stands out the most for me. Going down the list a little bit more, it's guys like Von Taylor, Carlos Ortiz, I'll have pieces of, Matt Wallace even to an extent, but not a lot of these names. Really, once you get below like 6,600, it kind of falls off for me.
Yeah. Geoff, I mean, feel free to talk about anyone, but I will say, Sal brought up an interesting point there. You have some guys, my surname Jazz, Janawan, whatever his name is, incredibly highly ranked in the official world golf rankings. But, it's debatable of how sustainable their play would be if they played week in and week out on the tour. How do you balance that with the cheapies here? And I guess, is there a guy or two that you are comfortable saying, you know what, this would be my last man in?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a field like this, I wouldn't go that route necessarily because, Jazz was having trouble like closing out, mini tour events as we were on the break here. So he was getting some competitive action in those. So you do like that. But again, he's paired between guys like, Pat Perez, even like a guy like Robbie Shelton, who's a pretty regular, on the Corn Ferry, been playing good in that regard, and a couple dudes lower than him. So I wouldn't necessarily weigh that in this field. I just think it's too deep to go looking like that, especially with guys you don't know that much about. But there's definitely a ton of players. I think for a cash game kind of build, yeah, I mean, Lanto definitely. I do like Brendan Todd this week. It's a great setup for him. I threw out on my Twitter, like he's got some revenge factor because he was on Twitter last year dissing like Drew Love for getting the invite over him. He deleted it, but I have a screenshot, so I kept the receipt. But Brendan Todd sets up well. He's a really good bent grass putter too. So I think he'll come out and play well. He's got a top 5 at this event. Definitely a player I'm okay. I would be okay putting a cash line. I really like Jimmy Walker too. I think I mentioned him in my long shot bets. He's played really well here, even when he hasn't been in good form. And his last 2 events, right before break, he gained over 9 strokes on approaches, cumulative in the 2 events. Player can pop with the putter. I think Jimmy Walker still has one more good run in him. He's only 40. Like I said, he's a Texas guy. He's won in Texas before, so I really like him at 6,700. And going down, I got to say, I do not mind KH Lee at 6,200 at all this week. He's popping in some of the key approach metrics. I know 150 to 175 is really good. He was really consistent prior to the break. So I think 6,200, I'm all about that. I think it sets up well. He's a guy who can, generally go pretty fire with his approaches, can heat up a tiny bit with the putter. I don't mind taking a shot with him there at all. That's kind of my last player down this week, it looks like right now.
Yeah, for me, just to put a bow on it, and again, I know I keep saying this, but I'll get fully in depth of my player pool tomorrow. But I think you want to ask yourself, what do my 5 other players have? Like, if you're like, I've got more than enough upside, I just want a guy who can come in 36th. Like, that's fantastic. You're going to look maybe to, some of the guys that have a little more historical, I'm not saying play Steve Stricker, but like guys that maybe can make a cut, but they can't crack and knock down the door. If you're saying, you know what, I think this is wide open. I'm going to go for some upside. You just mentioned KH Lee, when he gets going with his irons, my God, world class. Doc Redman is there. Some of these guys that have shown flashes here or there. Sal, you mentioned, we don't have enough time in the show to talk about Denny McCarthy. His putting splits. There's just a lot. I think it's important to separate. Are you playing Siwoo Kim, or are you playing someone that is more their top 20 equity is minimal, but their made cut equity is a lot better. So that's how I kind of approach it. But we'll give some final thoughts and then we'll bounce on out of here. Again, chat, hit that like button. And if you have questions, find us on Twitter, Sal. But what are you thinking in terms of lineup construction? Are there any final thoughts that you want to get out there before we peace on out?
Yeah, it's one that I touch on, and I think a lot of us touch on often, is just if you're playing the Millie Maker and you're not playing like 150 lineups, because the far majority of people don't. So if you're playing just like 1 to 5 to 10 lineups, you have to get different. But you can also play all the chalk. The biggest thing is just how much money at that point then you're spending. So if you want to leave $1,000 on the table and play every name that for a reason they're popular, the Morikawa's, Woodland if he's popular, all these names, one of the guys up top, just leave like $1,000+ on the table in those lineups and you'll be completely fine. So instead of trying to play the ownership game, or maybe you just don't have the means to afford the ownership right now with everything that's going on or any of those types of tools, you just know that you won't have that duplicated of a lineup and a unique lineup to yourself if you just leave some money on the table. So that's something that I always say. If you do use an optimizer, you could just set the top to like 49,500 and crunch out your lineups.
It's very true. And in a Millie Maker, I had this. I did a show before with Josh Engelman and Laffy, and we were talking about before the show for MMA the value of having unduped lineups in a top heavy thing like a Millie Maker. It's the same here. And with this field, Geoff, you can find amazing lineups, that are 48-9 or whatever. It's not like you're going to be scrounging for every dollar with the depth of this field and the soft pricing. And
this is a course too. It's not going to shut out half the field. Like, it's not like we're talking about a power course where if you don't hit it over 305, you have no shot. There's 80% of the field has a shot this week. Maybe that's a little high, but you get my drift. Colonial is very much, like I said, it can turn into a bit of a putting contest. So that brings in more players. That just brings it, more of a variance fest. So yeah, I am on board with that strategy this week. I don't think that's an issue at all. And I will actually, just to add on to that, I do feel like cash games are going to be they're going to be hard to differentiate this week. I think they're going to be a lot of guys, might be going to like 1-1, 2-2 kind of situation, Webb, Morikawa. I think most people are going to start there and things like that. So, something to keep in mind. I don't even know if I'm going to do cash. I might just do GPPs this week. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about where to put your cash. Money.
I'll be in the cash streets, probably without Morikawa for what it's worth.
Okay, well, there you go.
I'm a rebel, but I do agree with that. We'll get into all that and more tomorrow, but thanks, guys. As always, chat, rare form. I like to see everyone in peak golf condition right off the bat, but we will be back next Monday. And like I said, plenty more to come on the Awesemo network of shows here. So good luck, everyone, and I will see you back here 2:30 Eastern tomorrow with Tim Frank.